Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto, Willies, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to every nook and cranny receiving our signals from our 100,000 watt transmitter. Good morning to the rest of the world having great access through the wonderful genius of the internet. Folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. We got a great start with the national anthem on the day when many protesters are being evicted from their camps as they protest the mass murder that is occurring right now in Gaza. Folks. I am glad that Howard started with the national anthem, but it was a shocker to me. But it is apropos to have had that today. Protests, folks, is not a bad thing. It's a centralized thing. Destruction of property, that sort of stuff is bad, but don't let provocateurs change what the reality is of protest. But before we get any further, I need to get into the studio, the people, the geniuses. Buenos dias, mis hermanos favoritos en el estudio in Caroline. Good morning, my brothers in the studio at Caroline.
Our nation was founded on a protest from England.
Yes.
We were protesting. The Boston Tea Party was a big example of that. They threw all that tea in the harbor.
Yeah.
And destruction of property is going to happen. But, you've got to stand up and make your voice heard. If you can't do it at the ballot box, well, sometimes you just got to take things into your own hands. And for the protesters, protest away, because this is nothing more than United States sponsored genocide, and it's wrong, and it needs to stop. We need to stop giving Israel money because we need the money. So you've had my mini rant today. And good morning, Egberto. And Jack, what you got, man?
Good morning, Egberto.
Buenos dias, Jack.
Okay, well, it goes along with the same thing. What scares the corporate elites more than anything? Students speaking truth to power. Students are the consciousness of the world. They see with their eyes, they feel with their hearts, and they speak their truth. This scares the hell out of the businessman because it holds them accountable for their actions. It's like when a child corrects an adult and the adult knows the child is right, but the adult punishes them for their defiance. Businessmen fear student protests. They use violence and false innuendo to suppress the student message. The right of dissent is key to maintaining our freedom.
Brother, you nailed it. Thank you for saying it. I like the analogy. There are some parents that when they are corrected by the youth, the kids, there are some teachers when they're corrected by the youth, the kids, they don't have enough within to just say, "Oh, I was wrong. You were right." As Anand Giridaradas said yesterday, and I have a tape that a video that I made on that I'll play if we don't get overboard today with our calls and with Neil Aquino that's here with us today. But this thing that I want to play is a piece where he says, "Remember this. Every single student movement that we've had thus far in this country, maybe they didn't have the answers as far as solution is concerned, but they were right. They aged well. Remember this. They aged well. They aged well in the Vietnam issue. They aged well in the Iraq issue, and they will age well in what's going on here today. Do not allow anybody who is supporting these protests to somehow go ahead and say these guys are anti-Semitic. There's anti-Semitism that has been growing in this country since from Trump and the riots that occurred under Trump. Jews will not replace us. All that evil stuff that sect that now want to play like they're on the right side, that sect, that is where our anti-Semitism came from. Yes, there is some anti-Semitism on campus from some immature folks who just don't get it. But let's be clear here. The biggest damage to our Jewish brothers and sisters right now is what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza. Netanyahu in Gaza is creating a mass group of people who will become terrorists because of what they've seen happen to their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, when they see those broken bones, when they see those open skulls, when they see those 500-pound bombs coming down and destroying their property, destroying where they live. When they see this happening over and over again, and 15 kilometers across in Tel Aviv, or however many kilometers in Tel Aviv, people can go and drink their coffees. Look, there is a problem between Gaza and, yes, Israel. There is an issue that needs to be resolved, and hopefully resolved in a peaceful manner. But what is occurring right now? What is occurring right now is people would it is genocide, folks. Look the word up. What we have in Israel now is genocide, and it is an apartheid state. I don't say much of this on air here at KPFT, but at some point, humanity and morality must reign. It is horrendous what Hamas did. It is horrendous what Netanyahu did. It is horrendous that you continue to take people's property in the West Bank. There are a whole lot of things to be honest about. And you know what? In those encampments right now, there are our Jewish brothers and sisters participating and saying what these agents, what this government is doing is wrong. To my students over in all these campuses, I revere you. I honestly revere you. And as people like Morning Joe and the others speak up against you as if you are doing something immorally wrong, no, you are morally right. You are morally right. We need to have a moral stand at some point. But anyhow, folks, today we are honored to have, once again, it's Thursday, which means it is Brother Neil Aquino's Day, the founder of the Houston Democracy Project, one of our great leaders in this city and actually in this state, and I'm pretty sure the darn country. Neil Aquino, how are you doing this morning?
Very good. Good morning, Egberto, and good morning, global politics done right audience. I'm reading here about the arrest at Fordham University in Queens. I have a friend whose daughter goes there, and it's a Jewish family, and they're excellent people, but it's caused a little bit of tension between me and my friend. And it's a tough issue to talk about, but I agree with the things that Egberto said, and I appreciate the protesters.
Thank you, Neil. Neil, Johnny and Stephen, I'm coming to you guys in a second here, but I want Neil to open up with the issue on HCAD and nominations first. Then I promise to get to you guys on the phone. Oh, Neil dropped out again. I tell you what, Neil, I've been having some connection issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Stephen and then Johnny. So let's go to Stephen. Come on in, Stephen. How are you doing this morning, my brother?
So,
good morning.
Yeah, come on in, Stephen.
Good morning to you guys. To you again, you and your guests and the geniuses. I just like to say I am constantly distressed at what is the propaganda which is put out by Israel and the current administration with regard to the situation as it stands with the war of Israel against Hamas. You know, when your enemy, such as Hamas, is invisible, certainly the victims of the war with your enemy become invisible. And I think that's what has happened with the victims, the true victims of this war campaign has become to Israel and the United States. I have on my social media page a guy I was in the Marine Corps with, which he's all right. I never really cared much for him, but he goes to the fact that we were all in the Marine Corps together during the same time. Now, he's Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican and half Jewish, mother being Jewish. And he's been to, according to him, he's been to Israel quite a few times. And he mandates that it is perfectly fine for Israel to do what they're doing. And I've more than once likened what Hamas has done to that of Nat Turner. A lot of people are unfamiliar with Nat Turner's story. But that's fine and dandy. I suggest that they would look it up. And I would, in distress, I would liken Hamas's actions to that of Nat Turner's. Having said that, I'll say this. We don't know how many slaves lost their lives during that 400 years of United States rule over them, as we are constantly being surprised with the advent of today's reporters, that is, the cameras on our phones, as to what goes on even now within the streets of our United States. So I say that, relatively speaking, it's no difference. The difference is very small. Even though how horrendous it was for Hamas to take those 1,200 lives, those lives pale in comparison to the lives that had already been taken and to the lives that are constantly being taken now to satisfy that bloodthirst which is Israel.
My God, I just wanted you to continue, my brother, because I mean, the humanity spills out in your wordology. And let me just tell you, I'm glad that you brought it home as well, because in bringing it home, what you've done is to prove one thing. We don't have the moral authority. And that is the reason Israel and not Israel, but I want to make sure. And to my Jewish brothers and sisters, let me pause for a second here, because I want to make sure and be correct and balanced. Look, from a people who themselves have been aggrieved, meaning Black folk, Latino folk, etc., and I Caribbean folk, and I share all those identities. I am a part of all those identities. I want to say that we understand how sometimes our own being aggrieved can color our response as far as how we react to certain things. And in that, I want to let that be understood. But that said, what my brother Stephen so eloquently pointed out, we have to take into account. Hey, Stephen, I got calls coming in. You have anything you want to close with so I can go to Neil and then pick Johnny up?
I would just say that I would love to see the progressive people in this country stand up and come together and do our dangest to override this madness that is taking over our legislative system.
Thank you, brother. And I tell you what, the students, as Anand Giridaradas says, the students seem to always be leaders in that regards, and they're doing it right now. Thank you so kindly, my brother. All right, Johnny, I'm coming to you, but let me get to Neil. I want Neil to bring up something about HCAD right now and endorsement, because I need to get this story out for our local elections. Go ahead, brother Neil.
Very great. Very good. So the HCAD elections coming up, Harris County Appraisal District's election day is this Saturday. Turnout has been very low, and we've talked about the need to not have Paul Betancourt's candidates for these Harris County appraisal districts win. And so there's one candidate named Kyle Scott. This is in my Houston Democracy Project blog. Kyle Scott, who in 2022 was the losing candidate for Harris County Treasurer. He lost. And the Chronicle, so the Houston Chronicle did endorsements, and they endorsed Mr. Scott. They endorsed Mr. Scott. He's a Republican. Here's what they said about him. In 2022, when he ran for Harris County Treasurer, we endorsed his opponent because he said he'd effectively veto county commissioners by refusing to sign checks as a safeguard against wasteful spending. Such a protest would go far beyond the largely ceremonial duties of a relatively minor county position. So he told them already that he would use his office essentially to veto the county commissioners. He told them already. Then he was one of the 21 defeated Harris County Republicans, we used to talk about this on the show, who sued to overturn 2022 general election results. Those suits were tossed out by a Republican judge. So the Chronicle knew that he was willing to exceed his duties. And then in our political climate of election denial, He sued to overturn the people's vote.
Okay, we temporarily lost Neil, who's going to come back in a minute. So, he's back. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, and I'm back. So I'm sorry. I keep blinking out. I'll be out for a second. And they still endorsed him. So the upshot of this is we should be able to trust our institutions. We should be able to trust the editorial board, not to make the picks that, we always prefer. But when they tell you they're an election denier, when they've sued to overturn it, when they've talked about using their office to veto, the count, it's in this climate of election denial, and they still endorse them. And it so often feels as we fight these anti-democratic challenges that we are really on our own. And the Chronicle, to my view, shouldn't interview any candidate who won't make a firm commitment to accepting election results. I'm not a press basher. Chronicle reporters do good work. Jen Rice at the Chronicle made clear that these suits had little merit, that the 2022 vote was perfectly fair and fine. So it's just kind of incredible to me. It's just incredible to me that this is the decision that our decision makers make. He's told you he doesn't respect election results, and they still endorse him.
I think they picked two of the three that you've actually suggested people vote for at the Houston Democracy Project. Is that correct?
No, they suggested Kathy Bluford Daniels for position 1, Kyle Scott for position 2, and another woman for a Republican woman who does not have the same issue. Whether she supports Trump or not, I don't know. I don't need people to stop being Republicans. There's two parties for 330 million people. There's going to be Republicans. There's going to be other party. What I need people to do is step back from support of an election denier. Okay, I mean Lisa Murkowski, or locally Bill King. Bill King,
right,
who ran for mayor. He has stepped back from it.
I think it's important that what you just said, you're not asking anybody not to be a Republican. In fact, I always, I've done programs where I've said, I want Republicans. We need Republicans. We need to have people to object and to test all the policies that each other wants. When a Republican come out with a policy, it's necessary for progressive to stress test that policy. When progressives comes out with a policy, or Democrats come out with a policy, we need Republicans, people who are usually in the opposition, to stress test it. That makes things better. So I am not anti-Republican. I am anti-fascism, which is what the party has turned into. Let me go to Johnny now, and thank you for that, folks. But anyway, folks, beforehand, the election is when the early vote is done. When is the
early
election?
voting is done, and every election denier elected is another brick in the local structure of authoritarianism. Then that's what I've been saying. These appraisal district issues themselves are important. The Republicans want to be able to strangle local revenue. I voted for Kathy Bluford Daniels, Melissa Noriega, and Palumi Adelke, position.
Amazingly, that those are the ones that I voted for as well. Let's go to Johnny. Come on in, Johnny. Sorry to have you hold in, and sorry to have Harry and Gonzalo hold in as well. Come on in, Johnny.
Okay, brother from another mother, I trust you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay. And to dovetail what Magic Jack said earlier, I would like to add that what would really give the oligarchs some pause would see not only young people in their 20s at universities doing what they're doing, but for theoretical white guys in their 60s also join in with them, not just in spirit, but in open thought, in public, alongside with them, showing up, emailing, snail mailing, with the same exact sentiments that I express with you guys each and every day. And to put that on steroids, how about, here's my fantasy. We have a coalition of organizations like Code Inc. and Move On and Democracy Project with Neil Aquino for the purpose of recruiting volunteers across the country, not just law school students, but other students in other disciplines, for the purpose of teaching them how to perform citizens' arrest of cops who are performing their duties illegally. So we put a stop to their beating up and killing Black and Latino American citizens. That would give people lots of, especially that guy who looks like Elton John, one of those Trump attorney generals, William Barr. Remember what he said the other day? He said all these bad things about Trump, but then he said he would still vote for him. He needs to be paused in prison.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you. Thank you. Look, Johnny. Thank you for saying that. And as a white guy, Johnny came out and said, we want white guys to step up. And what do you mean, white older guys to step up? And what he means as well is that right now Trump is trying to create this false split between white men as a victim right now. And I've had this discussion with Neil Aquino, my white brother right here on the show right now. And that is the case. Our white brothers have to step up now to say, no, what Donald Trump is pushing is full of it. We are no victims. We're a part of this fabric of America. And we want to be a part of the solution. I let you respond real quick to that, Neil. Then I want to jump to Melissa.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the unfortunate things is that survey after survey is showing that message is reaching white younger men too.
Yes.
What Jack said earlier about you young people being a voice, that's true. There also is. I saw a story. Unfortunately, at the same time, I saw a story about the German far right party. The Alternative for Germany is getting more young white supporters. That's just not the center right; it's the far right. I read about in Modi, who's been doing in India, who's been attacking Muslims and freedom of the press. Young Indians, many are voting for him. So unfortunately, these battles continue across the generations.
And look, progressives have to do a job. We got to stop seeming elitist, etc. And we need to make sure that the door is open for everybody. Are you listening, my Appalachian brothers and sisters? We want you. Melissa, come on in, my sister.
Morning. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, panel. Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
Good morning, my dear. How are you doing, my dear beautiful lady? Talk to me.
So I just wanted to call and commend you for approving the January 6th riots. You just approved the whole situation.
Oh,
right?
Who approved it?
You just said you just did.
How?
You just said that the stress. Okay, you just said that we need stress testers. And I would call January 6th a stress tester.
Oh,
they had a grievance.
You scared me for a minute, Melissa.
I ain't scared. That's the truth. They brought their grievance to the Capitol, and it's just the difference is they were allowed to enter. Black Lives Matter wasn't allowed to enter.
Let me just.
It's like, okay, we need stress testers, right? So I would compare January 6th as an adult event and our youth as a minor cause, but it's still a cause. It's for the people to understand that they have a grievance. We need to stand up and fight it. It doesn't really matter what color you are.
Girl, young lady, you are so, let me tell you something, okay? Let me just tell you. I'm glad you brought that up.
And for the parents, go ahead. I'm sorry. Listen, for the parents and the students who get knocked out over their head, the parents need to go and support their children. I mean, it's a grievance. It's youth, and they're fighting for their future. So,
okay,
come on, we can't be for one and then not for the other.
Melissa, you know something? Melissa, wait. You make such an important point. And you know what? I'm glad to tell you right now, guess what, beautiful? I was ahead of you. Because the piece that I'm playing, the piece that I'm supposed to play, if we can get through all the calls and Aquino, actually, Anand Giridaradas spoke about that when they brought up January 6th, if what these kids are doing, if January 6th is okay. And we make a distinction about January 6th, but actually a lot of January 6th would have been okay. So yes, you're right about that. Okay? But we made a distinction. And I want you to listen to that. If I don't get a chance to play it, you are on my newsletter, I believe. Go ahead and check out what the newsletter. Yeah, check out the newsletter and what we said for Anand Giridaradas. But anyway, I am glad that you brought that up, because the one thing we don't want to be, we have to be intellectually honest and consistent. Yes. You agree?
Correct. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I'll continue listening now.
Thank you, my dear. Check it out. We'll talk. All right, let's go to Harry. Come on in, Harry. Sorry for keeping you waiting this long.
That's okay. I love what Melissa had to say. She's absolutely right about that. I love what Stephen had to say, and I love what the mayor of politics on the right had to say. We need all of those things. Well, I'll just say this. I've said this before on your show recently. Let's see. Howard Reynolds, Jack Van Diver, your guest today, Neil Aquino, you, Egberto Willis, and all the progressive callers that call this show. We need progressive-minded thinking people. Now, what Howard was saying there earlier about stop giving them weapons, I don't know if Joe Biden, if he were to get a second term, would stop that and would call for a permanent ceasefire. I know Dr. Cornel West, if he became president, would do that, because he's a humanitarian and he's about doing
Harry,
right.
Can I interrupt you? I normally don't interrupt I usually make you make the whole point, but I want to interrupt on this second here. First of all, I think you are right. I don't think arms will stop specifically if Biden gets reelected. But here's the other thing that I would say. It doesn't matter which American president gets reelected until we, the people's mindset change and force them to change that policy. That policy will remain. So I'm saying that is one of the reasons I can't vote solely on that particular item. But you are correct. I agree with you, sir. Continue, my friend.
Right. We need progressive-minded thinking senators like Senator Sanders, and we need progressive-minded thinking House of Representatives. And what Tag told you the other day, that's not talked about on Steve Hunter's show, about the hydrocarbons, about the natural gas field, the oil. That's why Netanyahu wants that. What you said on this show before, what Hamas did was wrong. But who funded Hamas? Netanyahu did. And then they went and attacked and killed those 1,400 Israelis. Now the Israelis use that as justification, the Netanyahu government, to commit mass genocide. And they talk all this nonsense about, well, they're using the Judean people or the people we call Palestinians today that are not part of the Hamas organization as human shields, because they want to drive those people out of there. And they want to take the Gaza and Rafah and all those cities.
Harry, wrap her up for me so I can go to Gonzalo. I think I want to play that 12-minute video because I think it's important. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Harry.
We need to hear that. We need to hear Gonzalo, and we need more. We need politics done right, and Utah need to keep having progressive-minded thinking people, and the students keep doing what you're doing, and keep protesting, keep demonstrating.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Can I say something just for a brief moment?
Yeah, please do.
I wanted to say this last week and I'm pulling it up. With Cornel West, his vice presidential pick.
Oh God, we lost him again. I'm going to wait 5 seconds. If he comes back in 5 seconds, I'll let him finish. I think he's back. Go ahead, real quick to finish that.
Let me find the exact point I want to make. Go to the call, please.
Okay, come on, Gonzalo. Gonzalo, you are on. Good morning, my brother. Estás aquí, hermano. Háblame.
Yes. Okay. About the protesters, what I have seen is banners reading ceasefire. If there are other people who take advantage of the event to say something about the Jewish or people who take advantage of going there to do illegal stuff, that's another thing. But the main point is ceasefire. If you hear the students, they have their voice, and their goal is to claim a ceasefire. I haven't heard a statement from President Biden about that. What I have read is Blinken has been 7 times to Israel to try to convince Netanyahu about the possibility of having a ceasefire. But we recently voted, and a huge, humongous check was issued with the complicity of both Republicans and Democrats to support the wars in Ukraine and Israel. Why don't they use that check to lever up the negotiation? So we need President Biden. We need the president to give a statement about that situation.
I agree.
I haven't heard Biden say a word about the protesters. I haven't heard a word about that. So we need that.
Gonzalo, I agree with you. Gonzalo, I agree with you. I want to run, so your statement is made. I agree with you. I'd like to go ahead and play this video, and then I'll come back, and anybody else can call in after that. But I really think Melissa opened the door. That the fact that Melissa heard what she heard, I think it's important that we play this video, because she would be representative of the honesty that a lot of people are going to say, hey, what about this? It's important. So let's listen to this, and then I'll get back to Aquino and the others. But let's listen to this now, and then we'll take it on the other side. This morning on Morning Joe, I saw what is likely one of the most intelligent discussions on the protest movement that's happening right now for the ceasefire. And I tell you, Anand Giridaradas and Maya Gay, I think they knocked it out of the park by educating the public, and to some extent reminding someone like Mika Brzezinski, who is a very smart woman and someone who truly stands for peace as well, but making that point, unlike what much in the mainstream media has been trying to push out to malign these kids that are protesting, or to have one believe that somehow this protest is not a valid protest or done in the wrong way, etc. Frank Bruni had some interesting points to bring to the discussion as well. But I mean, Anand and Maya, I think they really got to the core of what the protest movement is about. I was proud about it, because back in the 80s, back at the University of Texas, we were all protesting for our university to divest from South Africa, which was an apartheid state, similar to what Israel has become in the West Bank and in Gaza, right? So I think it is important that this message comes out. What Anand points out, it's that the message that these students are putting out is likely to age much better than those who are continuously trying to malign them or oppress them. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Mara, you used 2 words that are so important. You said challenging, you said complexity, and then you said we have to hold several truths at once. We're no longer any good at that. I have my truth. You have your truth. I don't consider your perspective and wonder what the merit in it is or how you came at it. I don't think we need to find some sort of common ground. I just go to the battlements. And that larger culture is part of what you're seeing on campus. It's interesting to look at these scenes and think about how much visual similarity there is to January 6th. These are different extremes of the political spectrum. There's a common political muscle, and there's a common cultural dynamic to both.
I mean, I brought up the sort of just initial seeing people bashing in the windows going, yeah, that's what happened on January 6th.
I understand the visuals, right? But I do think people's motive and intent is of great moral relevance, right? And if you are motivated to show up on the Capitol to invalidate an election because you've been goaded to think that
right. But do you
that a kind of rising people of color America is, and the gays and everybody else are coming to suppress your freedom? That is one kind of motivation to overturn a constitutional process. The founders didn't even put protest as like the third or fourth amendment. They actually put it first in line, and they were all dissidents. They were all breaking the law. I mean, starting a country, your own country, when you're actually part of another country, is the ultimate civil disobedience. It is this country started with a giant illegal act, right? An illegal act I think we're all grateful for. It doesn't mean that all disruption is good. It doesn't mean all disruption is bad, but I think it is complicated, as you say, and we need to be able to hold complexity. And I think students are often wrong about the specifics of what they say. Students are not good at setting a foreign policy. Students are not good at necessarily like 8-step strategy, but students throughout history have often been telling us something really vital that almost everybody else in the society is too afraid or too paid to say.
I mean, would you apply that same logic of your first premise that you laid out beautifully to protesters on January 6th?
Yeah, it's not the thing they're saying. It's the truth in that movement is that we have an enormous number of people in this country who are anxious and stressed and feel like they don't fit in a multiracial democracy. And as I've said many times on this show, I think those of us who want that multiracial democracy have not done the right organizing job to show a lot of those people that they don't need to go with fascism. They don't need to go with white supremacy, that there is a healthy, fulfilling life for them in the future that's coming. And I have said many times, I think it is the burden of those of us who want that future to organize those people into a different reality. So yeah, when I see January 6th, I'm absolutely trying to understand what is underneath the thing, right? Part of grievance is there's a thing on top and there's the thing that people are actually feeling and actually driving them. And it's often different.
Frank.
However disenfranchised those rioters felt, whatever the spark of their behavior was, I just do not want us to romanticize.
Did you think I romanticized them?
No, I said you. Well, I think Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is.
I'm not affiliated with Donald Trump. What I'm saying is, I think all political behavior, there's an expression of putting a chair somewhere or climbing a wall. That's the behavior. And there's often something going on with people underneath. And you can't do politics well if you don't understand. I'm not romanticizing anything, to understand. If you don't understand why very large numbers of white people in this country have been convinced that fascism is better than multiracial, if you don't like get that and have that ability to talk to them and do some research, you're not going to be able to outwit that. And I think if you don't understand what is motivating students to potentially throw their entire careers, academic prospects, what's inspiring them to potentially throw all of that out. Again, you're missing something. You don't have to agree with it, but they're telling you something. And throughout history, they've often been telling us something that aged better than the people who were against them at the time.
I'm pretty sure we are on the same page here, but no matter where it happens, violence and, breaking of the laws, vandalism, taking over buildings, jumping in them, running all over them, saying you want to kill somebody is wrong.
Always
and
wrong.
Deserves consequences.
Absolutely. And by the way, civil disobedience is people choosing to suffer those consequences to make their point. That's literally what it is. It's a choice to face, it's a choice to willfully break the law in the view of everybody. Violence is always wrong. The intolerance that we've seen in this movement, any other movement, elements of it, always wrong. But it's also been overblown. Lydia Polgren from the New York Times did an incredible piece of reporting where, unlike most people, she actually went there and spent days on end, right? And she said, yeah, there are some people who say the wrong thing and problematic signs, but the bulk of this is peaceful, nonviolent protests about people who are devastated by an immoral war. And by the way, a lot of those protesters are Jewish. And so the idea that this is defined by the actions of some people who are outside the gates.
Well, we don't know exactly how many people who were arrested or taken in last night from Colombia were outside agitators or students. We still don't have those numbers. That means you don't have them either. So
no, I'm talking about the people over weeks who've been in that encampment. There were Passover Seders held by Jewish protesters in that encampment. Like, this is not a collection of anti-Semitic activists. Like, this has been, there's been a lot of reporting on who these people are. There've been a lot of interviews, and there's a lot of incredible Jewish students at the heart of this peace movement that we should not just erase and paint with a broad brush. But look at people who've actually done the reporting in both of your paper, Lydia Polgren, incredible, fair reporting. And it's evidence-based. And I think we should just ground ourselves in evidence rather than kind of slander slandering this group of people, as so many people are doing.
I'm not slandering anybody.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying a lot of people.
They can't break the law and break into buildings.
No, they were choosing to break the law to face consequences to make a point.
I just want to, again, just separate the difference between breaking a law that says you can't enter a building and occupy an administration building and committing acts of violence on other individuals. So I just think we need to separate that for a moment. I think that's really important because I believe there should be consequences for, occupying an administration building as well. But that is not the same action as committing violence. That is actually, I believe, a part of civil disobedience. And actually, when you look back at the civil rights movement, the belief among those leaders, and I think this was the right one, was that violence is corrosive to the human spirit and also to democracy. So actually, it was an inversion of what we're thinking of at the moment. What you actually had was people from SNCC and other movements who were having violence committed upon them and refusing to act in response. That's what you saw at lunch counters across the country. That's what you saw when we saw police hoses coming out against peaceful protesters protesting for civil rights. So I just want to highlight that to say that there is a right way to go about civil disobedience that is still going to be uncomfortable, but it is not going to be violent.
But taking over a building versus the violence that we might have seen versus chanting river to the sea.
I think the difficult thing about the First Amendment is that you can have hateful speech, offensive speech, and the First Amendment still applies. That's true if the Klan was marching through Fifth Avenue right now. They have a right to do that. And that is difficult for us. So even when something is offensive, that doesn't necessarily mean that people should be stopped from expressing offensive views. I just want to be clear. I find anti-Semitism horrific and offensive. But again, I think that universities are public spaces, and I don't have the right to be safeguarded from offensive speech necessarily. I think that's very difficult.
That Mara's making very well is that there is on one side of a line, there is violence, intimidation, hate that's directed at individuals, makes you not, that's all on this side of the line. And we don't endorse any of that. And no one sensible that I know endorses any of that. But on the other side of the line, there is encampment. There's even things like taking over buildings, which has a history in this country as part of protests that aged better than the people who are against those protests. And it is part of the discomfort of living in a free society. And sometimes people who we perceive in the moment, I just saw the incredible Broadway new musical, those women fighting for suffrage were cast in exactly the same light. They were force-fed by the police because they were perceived in the exact same light as people on the wrong side of history. They aged much better.
I hadn't heard a discourse like this on the mainstream media. We hear it all the time in our chats, and we hear it all the time in our independent media, but I hadn't heard it quite like this on the mainstream media, to which I say to Mika Brzezinski, even though she, you kind of had to bring her into the fold, we have to thank them for giving this platform on a program like Morning Joe, because I tell you, it is hard with what our mainstream media is trying to do to cater the message, to try to not let people see the way things really are, but towing some line. Notice one of the things that Anand said, people either understand it or don't understand it for some reasons or are paid not to understand it. This was a great job. Anand and Mara Gay and Anand Giridaradas, great job. As well, Frank Bruni for some input that actually I think closed the loop.
We spend a lot of time.
Absolutely so, folks. Absolutely so. So, folks, as you can see, Melissa, who called in about Jan 6, you see that was a central topic, and both the similarities, distinction, and what part was right, etc. Let's go to Brother Neil, who wanted to make the comment. I trust that you found the thing you wanted to find.
Oh, I'll make that. Let me just say, and if I blink out, I'll be back in 3 seconds. But I protest every week at Senator Cornyn's office, and you have to, the police, who sometimes we have a complicated relationship with, but the police will put the onus on us. So we are out there. We've been there for 7 years and 14 weeks at Senator Cornyn's office, 11:30 each 5300 Memorial Drive each Tuesday. And when we've had things thrown at us, the police initially have said, "Oh, that's your fault. You stirred them up." So even here in this, multiracial Democratic voting city. We are out there for 7 years, and there is this presumption among institutions that you're doing something wrong or that you're a pain in the butt, and that is always the bias against protest, even relatively tame ones like the Cornyn, and let me just talk to the First Amendment. The only thing that keeps us out there is the First Amendment. The only thing that has stopped, because the building management at the place where we protest in the apartment building across the side street have wanted us gone, and they can't do it because of the First Amendment. So the thing I would say is that protesters, there's always this onus, this bias. You're doing something wrong. You're the cause of the problem. And I've become a semi-scholar in the First Amendment. It's an amazing thing. The First Amendment is your permit to protest. You don't need a permit generally unless you're going to use amplified sound or you need a big public park or something. You go protest or organize your protest tomorrow. And the First Amendment gives you great latitude. And even in these times, and even with a big giant police force, it's amazingly powerful.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate that. And before we go to Patrick, because I think you had something local to say, or is that not important? If you can do it in 15 seconds or so.
No, the Cornyn protest locally angle was my local.
Gotcha. Let's go to Patrick. But before I get to Patrick, folks, my email address for the person asking for it is kpft@politicsdoneright.com. I repeat, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. Come on in, Patrick. And I'm going to have to restrict everybody to a minute now, folks. Come on in, Patrick.
Sure. Good morning. Seems to me like January 6th is more of trying to end democracy, and what's going on now in the universities is trying to spread democracy and strengthen it. To the rest of the world, if we weren't protesting like this, we wouldn't look any better than the German people during World War II. So even if you don't like what's going on there, you should understand that's making a difference. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you so kindly for your words, Patrick. Very important words. Let's go ahead and go on to Tag.
Morning, Egberto.
Good morning, Tag. 1 minute, my brother.
Gotcha. Our biggest problem with this Israel and Gaza thing is that we don't really have a clear-cut policy that, except for to feed Israel with weapons like you'd give sugar to a sugar junkie. That's the only policy we have. And we have Congress that's having all these hearings and stuff, but nobody is really, establishing a policy on Gaza and the Palestinians. And my comment is, we have one Palestinian in Congress, Ilhan Omar, and I believe that she should head up a committee in the House of Representatives to, formulate some policy for Gaza and for the Palestinians.
Let me correct that. It is. Before you go, let me correct you, because I like to make sure that people get all the information. It is Rashida Tlaib that's Palestinian, and Ilhan Omar is Somalian. But or rather, of Somalian descent, and Rashida Tlaib is of Palestinian descent. And let me tell you, you are so right, Tag. But here's the problem: Democrats are too timid to take on an issue like that, because if she attempted to create a policy framing theme on Palestine and Israel, it would be, she would get swords from every New York Democrat, every California. It is ridiculous what would go through, which is what you're saying. It is something that needs to be examined. I agree 100%. So absolutely so. Let's go ahead and talk to
out on the name.
Yeah, no problem at all, brother. You take care. And Melissa, I think I got that text. I have to understand it. I don't quite understand it yet, but I'm going to figure it out in a minute. Come on in, Johnny.
What Nika needs to understand and accept is the idea of education through repetition, like advertising does. So it's good, all well and good to have that kind of discourse, but she needs to have that over and over and over again, just like we do. Otherwise, it's a lost cause.
Yes, you're so right. In other words, if we had more intelligent discourse instead of just talking points on TV, and I love, I am glad that I do some preparations here, because the biggest point of that program spoke about Jan 6, and when we have a caller calls in like Melissa did and said, "Hey, Jan 6," and bring that up, a lot of people are scared to bring that subject up in correlation with, let's say, the student movement, because an intelligent discourse isn't have on it, right? And that is what Anand Giridaradas did. He said, "Hey, let's look at what it is that drove those people here, man. Let's look at the underlying issues, because every protest has a genesis, right?" And that is what he's saying. And there isn't more intellectual honesty than that. So, Johnny, you're right. It should be something that we have over and over again. The problem with intellectual honesty, the problem with having these types of discourses, it actually destroys the plutocracy, because those in power start to lose the grip that they have when people find out that really they don't have the reason for being there. Anyway, Johnny, wrap it up for me.
Yes. So the bottom line is, you don't need that kind of inspiration, but she does. She needs to hire someone like me to be a producer in her ear in real time. That's what she needs.
You hear, Mika? Johnny wants a job.
You want all the reach. Bye-bye.
Bye. You have a great one, brother. Let's go to Brother Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Out of the 80 or so students that were arrested at the University of Texas at Austin, all the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, and 60% of them weren't students.
Okay.
And why isn't this on the mainstream news?
Didn't you hear about it?
Yeah, they're professional agitators. They're professional protesters.
If first of all, it's a public campus. I could go walk on the U of H campus tomorrow. It's a public campus for today. And this professional agitator stuff. But let me tell you, there's no money floating around.
He's gone. But let me tell you what I think Neil would have said. This professional agitator stuff is crap that's coming out. I hear the mayor of New York talking about that. They're all trying to make it. They're trying to bring it in so they can give it a terrorist angle, so they can go and bust people's skulls up. Go ahead, Neil. Finish.
Right. And so actually, New York, there was a story in the New York Times about a woman named Lisa Fithian, Fithian, who I've been to a presentation by her. She goes around, and it's incredible to me that it even made a story. They were calling her an outside agitist. In this era now, they call you a terrorist. And she's just a woman who goes around, and she wants there to be protest movements. She cares about this thing. She knows a lot. And they latch onto her, outside agitator, the same language Bull Connor used. It's the same stuff over and over and over.
It's crazy. Let's go. Brian, give me a closer real quick.
Okay, the two janitors that were in the Columbia University that were not allowed to leave, that's not a true story. That didn't happen. That's not a professional job.
How is that a professional job? I mean, I fail to see it. Now, if those two, wait, hold on though. Let me tell you, if students held janitors captive, that's kidnapping, right? And they are going to pay the price for doing that. And if they did that as a part of the protest, those two will. It is just like January 6th, right? January 6th, most of the people that went to January 6th and most of the people that protested and did all the things, there were no repercussions because the free press, freedom of speech, the ones who murdered cops, the ones who beat up cops, the ones who destroyed property, etc., they paid the price relative to what they did. And that is what it's all about. And listen to what Anand Giridaradas had to say. It makes sense. But I got to let you go, Brian. Thank you, as usual, for calling in, my brother. This is what we're all about. Neil, give me a closer.
Very good. Just remember those protesters at UT. That could be you tomorrow. That we could be dependent on a protest movement as if they throw out Republic ballots here in Harris County, mass migrant roundups. these folks aren't someone other. They could easily be you tomorrow for a cause important to you. So it's important. HoustonDemocracyProject.com.
Thank you very much. Hey, Genius is in the studio. It's all yours.
Nothing from me. Jack, what you got? He's got something. What you got? Go ahead.
Israel used their enemy, Hamas, to attack its own citizens.
Okay.
All right. Let me just do. Thank you. Let me make a quick correction because I meant to say this when Brother Harris said it as well. Let's be accurate. We want to make sure and keep our whatever. And the spirit of what Jack just said is correct. The spirit of what Harry just said is correct. But what Netanyahu did after being asked by UAE or Qatar, I don't remember which country, if to allow those bank accounts to continue to be used to fund Hamas, whether to continue doing that, he said it was okay. He didn't. Israel did not fund Hamas. Netanyahu did not give Hamas money, but they gave the green light for funding to Hamas, which then turned around and attacked Israel. And by the way, also Israel was so preoccupied with creating settlements in the West in the West Bank that they forgot about keeping their border safe. Anyway, folks, I got to get out of here. Thank you all that are listening. Thank you all that called in. Love you all my folks. Thank you, studio. Thank you, Neil Aquino, for the great work you do at the HoustonDemocracyProject.com. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. My name is EgbertoWillies.com. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.